Welcome to you all for joining us here today. This is the 7th episode, I believe, of our decarbonization webinars, which is our attempt to explain a bit more, go a bit deeper on our decarbonization journey. We try to share some learnings, insights, challenges, achievements. And the format is that I am the host here and I interview experts either from within the company or from outside. Today I have with me 3 colleagues, so all from within Moller Maersk, and I'll start with you, Leonardo Sonzio, Head of Fleet Management and Technology, so basically the group of engineers who have designed these new vessels. I also have with me Ingrid Andersen, who is heading up the sustainability function in the energy transition team. So Ingrid is the one that makes sure that everything we do is done in a sustainable manner and that the green fuels are indeed green. So we will talk more about that. And then finally, I have with me from Singapore, Mazhari, who is head of our energy markets team, which is basically our one face to the energy markets. And Emma is joining online because, as mentioned, she is in Singapore with the team out there today. So welcome to the 3 of you, and thanks a lot for joining. So during these webinars, we have talked quite a bit about fuels. We will talk more about fuels today, but without ships, no fuels will be needed. So let's start a bit with the ships, and I guess that goes to you, Leo. So we have 19 vessels on order. They're actually being built as we speak. Can you talk a little bit about how that is going?
Sure, and thank you, Morten. Great to be here. So the first vessel, which is the feeder, she's nearing the construction completion. This means that later this month she will undergo sea trials, which is a very important part of the delivery process, and it's actually where we're going to get first-hand experience on running on methanol. So super exciting. After the sea trials, she will commence her maiden voyage that will be concluded by mid-September, when the vessel will arrive here in Copenhagen, and we'll have an important ceremony and opportunity to indeed also visit the vessel. On the larger program, on the larger vessels, another major milestone was hit just a few weeks back. In fact, the keel laying ceremony of the first hull was completed, and construction is going as per plan, and we should have the first one delivered at the beginning of next year. So things are going according to plan, and I was actually down there in Korea seeing the construction, and it was very exciting, and you can really feel that we are getting there.
Great. Yeah, it's becoming very real, right? And we are now talking weeks, and then we will actually take delivery of the first green methanol vessel. So that's quite fascinating. I guess we always said that not that nothing is easy here, but actually getting the hardware, building the ships is probably the least of our concerns. And I guess what you just said confirms that. And that means, of course, that it is the fuel that is the biggest challenge. I guess that's not new. We knew that from the beginning. And Emma, you lead the team who is working very hard to secure all these fuels. Can you maybe give us a bit of an update on how that is going?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Morten. So I guess the first thing to consider here is that the market for green methanol is in its infancy. So there's hardly any production today. And it's a very challenging process to get to a place where we have fully operational sites that can produce green methanol at scale. Just to give you one example, our partner European Energy is constructing a facility in southern Denmark to deliver green e-methanol for our feeder vessel. And considering that European Energy is already a very experienced developer within wind and solar in Denmark, they expected that a handful of permits would be needed from the authorities. But in effect, they actually needed to get 29 permits. So that sort of goes to show the complexity and also the true pioneering work that we're really seeing in this space right now. Having said that, we do see a lot of momentum in our green fuel portfolio. And what we're doing is building a diverse set of partnerships with many different green fuel producers. And we also see a lot of promising projects globally. And there's, of course, very complex projects, and not all of them will materialize. But what we see is that, if you have one project that fails, there are many more that enters our pipeline. So there's a lot of potential, and we see a lot of momentum building across the industry now. And we feel that we've come a lot further than we would have expected at this stage.
Thanks, Emma. That is encouraging to hear. But I guess we also have we do have mountains to climb, and I think also it's fascinating to hear that actually we are seeing different production pathways. We are seeing even hybrids between some production pathways. A lot of ingenuity and innovation coming into play. The one thing it all has to have in common, of course, is that it needs to be green methanol, so that we are actually solving the climate problem. And that leads me to you, Marie. Can you talk a little bit about what we are doing to make sure that these things are actually green?
Yeah, sure. And it's important to notice, first of all, there's no definition of what a green fuel is. So in order for us to be transparent and clear about what we do, we have made our own definition of what green fuel is. And we have established thresholds that these green fuels need to meet in order to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions substantially compared to the fossil fuels we use today. So it's important for us that the new green fuels we use actually come with significant greenhouse gas reductions, because we don't have time to wait for or to employ solutions in the meantime that don't actually do much to the problem. So we have established thresholds that these fuels need to meet on a life cycle basis. So we look at the production of the fuel, the transportation of the fuel to the ship in this case, and our use of the fuel as well. And on that life cycle basis, we have aligned our minimum thresholds with the EU legislation. So for the biofuels, that threshold is 65% reduction compared to a fossil fuel, and for the e-fuels, it's 70%. And as you say, there's many different kinds of fossil or green fuels, and there's different kinds of methanol. We're talking about methanol today, and we've made a little illustration of what these pathways look like. In the beginning or in the previous webinar, we talked a lot about the e-fuels. Today we'll talk about the biomethanol and how that is produced, and it can be produced in different ways. It can be produced from biogas, which is what we will come back to later, how that works in practice. And it can also be produced from gasification of biomass waste. So for us in the production of biomethanol, it's important that the feedstock is a waste, so it's biomass waste. And for the e-fuels, that is made from a combination of biogenic CO2 and hydrogen from the electrolysis of water using renewable electricity. And all these pathways have in common that we require them to be certified by third parties. So they need to meet our thresholds, they need to be based on waste, renewable electricity, and they need to be certified.
It's a complex space to maneuver, and rules are not necessarily the same in different places and so on. But yeah, we are definitely doing everything we can to make sure that we're doing the best possible thing. And I think we'll get back to that also a little bit later. But I think so obviously for the climate we need to deploy the green methanol and sort of very practically, you know, it needs to burn on a ship. It's a new fuel. So getting methanol on the ships fast is also important actually from an operational perspective. And Leo, maybe if you can just elaborate a little bit on what we are doing to actually to get that going in the real world.
Sure. I think first and foremost we need to say that methanol as a fuel is not new to the wider shipping. In fact, a number of methanol tankers are operating on methanol today. And this is to say that especially on the main engine there is already knowledge and experience out there in the market. In fact, both during the specification and building phases of the vessel, we tapped into that knowledge and reached out to tanker operators to hear the most crucial aspect from their experience. That said, green methanol as a fuel is new to the container ship sector. And to be even more specific, particularly the new auxiliary engines we'll have on these vessels are a new type, and they've undergone a lot of R&D and testing, but certainly the operational experience is needed. Secondly, our crews are currently undergoing a tailored training program. We need to put that training into use. In fact, we need to complement the classroom learnings with real-life practical experience, such that we become very comfortable in dealing with all potential troubleshooting that normally happens in shipping operations. Actually, I think that probably the best way to learn more about the training is to hear directly from our crews, and we have here a testimonial.
I believe in Asia. I have never been as high as Finland, I've heard that they are doing this swimming in the sea of ice and the sauna. I'm really excited to see that also. I am Pio Gian Lumungsod, and I am second engineer on the backup team. Because I am engineer, I really like to know what's in there, the construction, the engineering, and how to operate the vessel.
Training so far is going quite well. We just finished up the basic and the advanced modules, and next week we will start with training in the simulators and the methanol part.
We are the pioneering team who will run the first vessel in the company which runs on the methanol fuel. Everything that we will be learning from here, we are going to bring it on board, we are going to apply it on board.
So we are indeed getting ready, and to be a bit perhaps more specific, the bigger changes that we will feel are among our engineers on board. In fact, they will be the one responsible for the bunkering operations, as well as the operation, maintenance and repair of engines, as well as the fuel system. So gaining that practical experience is really needed for us to scale up the knowledge both on board and ashore, such as that we are prepared for the big rollout. So in essence, you can say that the feeder vessel is there to gain experience. The real decarbonization impact will come from the large container carriers.
Yeah, thanks, Leo. And yeah, you mentioned that there is experience with methanol on the tankers. We should mention that that's methanol made from a fossil feedstock, so that's not really solving the problem. The methanol needs to be green. And you also mentioned, Leo, that in a few weeks we take delivery, and that vessel will do its maiden journey almost half around the world to Copenhagen, and it will actually be sailing on green methanol. And I have to say that when we ordered this ship, I was not entirely sure that we would make it, to be honest, but we did. And Emma, kudos to you and the team for that. I think that's quite an achievement. But maybe you can just shed a little bit of light on how we managed to do that.
Yeah, sure. And thank you, Morten. Yeah, so I'm very happy to share then that we have been able to secure green biomethanol for the maiden voyage for our feeder vessel when it sails from Korea to Europe. And this green biomethanol is produced by our partner OCI from biogas. Is going to be certified by the ISCC, and it will live up to the Maersk sustainability policy and the green fuel definition that Ingrid was telling us about just now. So it will achieve a 65% life cycle greenhouse gas savings. And securing this volume is very important because it provides us with the necessary ability to train our crew to get operational experience, like Leonardo just mentioned. And to be honest, and also just echoing what Morten just said, is that we had not expected that it would be possible to secure green methanol for the maiden voyage. So we're very proud of this, and also very appreciative of our partner OCI for the great collaboration we've had, and really for leaning in and making it possible to make this journey together. Once the vessel is delivered to Europe, and despite the pioneering challenges, then we expect that it will be fueled by e-methanol from European Energy's facility in southern Denmark from the first half of 24. And to get this plant up and running so quickly, it really is an amazing feat. We have a great partnership with European Energy. We appreciate all the hard work that they're doing to build this facility on a very tight deadline. And before this fuel comes to market from the European Energy facility, we expect that the feeder vessel will be sailing on biomethanol produced from biogas. And potentially this type of green methanol could also be an opportunity for some of the demand coming from the larger vessels that will hit the waters in 24 and 25. So while our projects in the green methanol portfolio mature and scale, that could be an option. Thank you.
All right, thanks Emma for that outline, and yeah, it is like you said, and I think we should really stress it. I think the partnership approach, the efforts we see from these partners is just amazing, and kudos to them as well. So I think it's actually kind of cool that we see this first ship will actually be sort of, the molecule is the same, but the production pathways will be different. So we will be exploring different pathways for the fuel production. The e-methanol that Emma mentioned, we heard about actually in the last webinar with Ørsted, because we also have a project with Ørsted on e-methanol. we haven't talked so much about the biomethanol pathways, which are actually in many ways a more mature technology. So it's quite complex, honestly, to describe these different pathways. But I don't know, Ingrid, maybe you will give it a try and see if you can explain to us how it actually works with this with the different forms of biomethanol.
Yeah, I'll try and make it simple. And actually, the pathway Emma mentions with biogas, that's actually the way the biomethanol that does exist in the market today is produced, most of it. So it's, you can say, the conventional methodology for producing biomethanol. So it's a biofuel. It's certified in accordance with the EU Renewable Energy Directive. It meets the 65% threshold. So we can talk a little bit about the biogas, how that is produced. Biogas can also be produced in very many different ways in different parts of the world. We source our biomethanol from the US, but in general, biogas can come from the agricultural sector, from manure, from dairies, from industrial waste, food waste, wastewater treatment plants. In our case, it comes from landfills, where municipal waste is deposited in big landfills, and then with time that waste decomposes into biogas and biomethane, which is pretty harmful for the climate already. So the biogas is captured at the landfill, it's cleaned and turned into biomethane, and then it's put into the gas grid in the US. And then the OCR plant is connected to the same gas grid, and it produces the biomethanol from the biomethane. So it's this production takes place using the principle of mass balance. So the certification and the chain of custody makes sure that the biomethanol is produced from biomethane from that particular landfill. So we know where it comes from. We know the greenhouse gas properties and environmental properties of that particular batch of biomethane that was put into the grid, and that can be traced all the way along to our biomethanol. And at the same time, it's ensured that only we can claim those environmental savings or attributes in connection to our fuel, and nobody else can claim any savings from that biogas or buy the same biogas. So it's a pretty robust and well-established way of producing green fuels today. And of course, it has the advantages that we use the existing gas grid, we use the existing methanol plant that OCI is already running, so we don't have to wait for a new one to be built up. And from a sustainability perspective, the capturing gas from waste is a good way of mitigating some of the methane emissions from the agricultural sector and from landfills. So we avoid some emissions of methane to the atmosphere. And at the same time, our offtake of biogas also drives or contributes to additional expansion of biogas capacity. So we drive more gas into the green gas into the market, which is good for everybody.
Yeah, and it's great to use existing infrastructure. And I guess isn't it fair to say that it's exactly the same principle you use for green electricity, right? When you buy a power purchase agreement for renewable electricity, you also don't build a separate green grid. You put it on the existing grid, and you use similar principles. So that's there are many ways that can lead to Rome, and I think we will need to take them all. And this is a really good and mature pathway. So thanks for. I hope that clarified somewhat. Otherwise, feel free to ask questions afterwards. So what we have also seen over the last year is that we have seen a lot of other ship owners order methanol-enabled ships. Most of them are from the shipping, from the container shipping sector. And I actually think that now it's about 18%, correct me if I'm wrong, Leo, that is of the order book that is actually these dual-fueled methanol ships. And I think that's great. I mean, it's really great to see the industry leaning in. It's great to see that the demand for the green fuels are there. And that I think as human beings, we can only be happy with that development. Of course, I guess if for someone in your chair, Emma, all other things being equal and sort of in a linear thinking, it also means that there's more demand out there. So how do you see that? How are we looking at that now that there's much more demand out there?
Yeah, there's of course a few different perspectives here, but first of all, let me say that the fact that many of other carriers are following our lead and also choosing methanol for their fleet is of course a tangible proof that green methanol is the main green fuel choice for this decade for shipping. So this is very good news. And it also means that we as an industry are sending a very strong demand signal to the market and moving us beyond this chicken and egg debate that we've been talking about for quite a few years now. So basically, now it's no longer a question about whether there will be a market for green methanol for shipping. It's rather about how quickly can it scale. So this is very good news. But of course, then a strong demand signal is also a challenge because it means that we will need very large quantities of methanol in a market that doesn't really exist today. But having said that, we do see a very strong supply response also. And our green fuel portfolio is rapidly expanding, and there are many new projects coming in on a regular basis. And we hope that this demand signal also inspires the energy majors to come to the table and develop more ambitious green fuel projects. Because what we need is scale. And to deliver scale within this decade, we need rapid ramp up of green methanol production capacity. We need to use a variety of feedstocks and technology pathways, as we talked about today, and we need many new partnerships.
Yeah, thanks, Emma. And as funny you mentioned this chicken and egg analogy, we talked a lot about that, I think even just 1 or 2 years ago. I think it's fair to say that the chicken have met the egg, or whether it's the other way around, I don't know. But this is really not a chicken and egg situation anymore. There are 100 vessels on order telling us it's not. It's a fuel supply challenge. It's about scaling. It's about getting costs down. Let's not forget about that, because there is a limit to how much we as an industry can afford to pay. So it's really about that. And it's definitely not easy. It's not an easy fuel pathway. It's not easy to produce sustainable green methanol. But then that's the problem we need to solve. And I think in that light, it's also actually very important to notice that we're actually getting some help from the regulatory side at this point. The shipping is going to be included in the ETS, so there's actually going to be a tax on carbon within the jurisdiction of the EU. That is very, very helpful. It actually funds a quite significant part of the green premium for these fuels, so very, very helpful. And on the other side, as another example of the Atlantic in the United States, we have the Inflation Reduction Act, which actually kind of attacks the other end of the problem, namely the production cost, and provides very extensive tax subsidies for green fuel projects, shaving off hundreds of dollars of the cost. So very, very helpful. Ideally, this would have been on a global scale. Ideally, the IMO would step up, increase the ambitions, as we expect it will, but also introduce a global tax on carbon on shipping. That is really what we need. But now that we don't have that, it's very encouraging to see that there is action at the more regional level. So a lot of positive signs. Also, it's still a mountain to climb, but very encouraging. And I'll end here on. I think we should end up here with a small video that actually shows the voice that our first feeder ship will actually travel almost half around the world on green methanol. Let's see that video, and that video is actually then also an invitation to you all to come here to Copenhagen and almost see and feel this this vessel directly. So let's have a look at the video. Thanks.